All right, let's get our other Facebook groups in here, rocking and rolling before we officially start the show here today. It's got the spinning wheels going, 1 and 2. Give it a second to breathe. I brought the coffee mug down because the shine of the metallic silver of my Yeti was causing the camera to go weird. So we're back to the Broncos for breakfast mug. Hopefully, I have to drink it fast enough to keep it warm. But here we go. All right, welcome in everybody. It is Tuesday morning, the 18th, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, as he's taking a big sip there, Scott Kennedy. Scott, good morning to you. Rocking the Chelsea shirt. How are you doing? How are things out there in Georgia?
I'm good, and yes, it is Champions League Day. So it's one of the coolest sporting events in the world, and you play two games, you add up the scores, winner goes through. Chelsea's down 2-0 today, so they play the second leg today against Real Madrid. They're in deep doo-doo, but, for this long anyway, I'll still think that Chelsea has a chance, but it'll be fun. And those are good. That's good in the afternoon. You got Broncos for breakfast in the morning. You got Mile High Huddle in the evening. It's like your lunch fix to just turn on some Champions League.
Yeah, who needs work, right? That's this Saturday was the first Saturday or weekend I've taken off all month. So I've been enjoying that. And I also got tickets for Cardinals Mariners this weekend. So I'm gonna enjoy myself this weekend too, even though it's gonna be 48 degrees and raining. Jeremy
43 here this morning with a high of 77. That's like desert weather.
Yeah,
freeze your butt off in the morning and then you're sweating bullets in the afternoon.
My family in the Midwest, they had 85 degrees last weekend, and then it was snowing yesterday morning. So that's the bipolar of the Midwest, and it's April. I mean, it's going to be like that. Jeremy Sean, good morning to you. Jeremy says, morning, fellas. The center of our problems seem to be the center of our problems. I think edge and cornerback are bigger needs than linebacker, but if Jack Campbell is available, yeah, Jack Campbell is, obviously, you've heard me wax poetic about him on here a few times. It's not just the tape and the size. He was like one of the top RAS athletes as well because of his agilities and his jumping at his size at 6'5", 250. You don't see many linebackers like that size anymore, and most of the guys are starting to come in at like 6 foot, 220. So to have that old school actually body type in today's sub package game is pretty valuable, honestly. But if Jack Campbell's there at 67, 68, you got a 10-year starter, a plus starter. Would not overthink that, even though I'm not the biggest linebacker proponent, but he is damn good. It's definitely would be interesting if he was there. Drake Wally coming in saying, good morning, boys. Good morning to you, Drake. Thanks for kicking us off with on the YouTube side of things with the super. $4.99 is big. If you have any questions, make sure you hit us up. We'll circle back there. David,
Drake, real quick for Drake. Drake, appreciate you coming in. We do some work with Drake on some Indianapolis Colts podcasts and whatnot. So Drake's awesome. Drake's one of the good guys in this business. So appreciate you coming in and supporting us this morning, Drake.
That's really nice. Thank you so much, Drake. Colts kind of growing up were my second team because they had so many Iowa Hawkeyes on their team. I really appreciated Dallas Clark there. And not my next door neighbor, but the house next to my next door neighbor. Their oldest daughter married Bob Sanders. So I got to meet Bob Sanders a few times. They had triplets, ended up moving to San Diego. They're doing fine. But really, really enjoyed the Colts and Bob Sanders. Got to go to a few games in Indy because of that connection. So and appreciate the Colts. David coming in, morning everyone, center, edge, cornerback, maybe a right tackle if we can develop. Yeah, we'll get into these positions here. Appreciate everyone, though, throwing out their opinions on the Broncos positions of needs. We're going to be talking about Pro Football Focus, listing the Broncos needs for starters and depth. Dave Glassman coming in, Buck all y'all. Buck you too, Dave. We appreciate that. Donald coming in. Good morning, Nick and Scott. Donald's somewhat of a newer name, but he's been coming in, hanging out a lot here recently. So welcome, Donald. Pull up a chair where if you want to become one of the new regulars here, we'd really appreciate that. Dominique Martin, morning, fellow Broncos fans. Buck every other team. Is this Ernie? MHH for life. Go Broncos. Appreciate you. We got Mark coming in saying we need vet backup, someone who knows what they need to do and where they need to do it. Vet backups are good, but they're a little bit more expensive and they have a little less upside typically. So we'll see how the draft comes and goes. I don't know if the Broncos will sign anybody before the draft, but after the draft, the dust settles from there. You'll see that third, fourth wave of free agency, and the Broncos will fill some players in there. Kevin Gray, morning, everyone. Nick and Scott, a big salute. There you go. To Broncos country, Denver Broncos for life, MHH. We also got our guy coming in here, Colin Wood. It's been a bit. Said, hell, every player we have seems to be semi-injury prone. That's somewhat true, but that's also somewhat the league, right? It's just a very violent game, and injuries are going to add up. Austin H. saying, Jeremy,
you're driving golf carts off into sand traps and stuff, so... it's a dangerous world out there. You got to be careful.
God, man, he wasn't driving. Apparently, I don't know. I have not golfed once in my life. It's not really my my hobby of choice. It's expensive, and at least you get to spend time outside, but never been much of a golfer. But at least he wasn't driving. I'm curious if the person he was with was under the influence at all. I feel like every single golf cart accident I've seen has involved some sort of alcoholic beverage intake. But glad that everybody's okay, man. That would be and at golf course named Arrowhead something too. I mean, that's unbelievable. Austin
Yeah,
H.
it really is. That's the right word for it. It's unbelievable. It's like if I told you that, you'd be like, no, you're pulling my leg, or you're stuffing me, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Reality stranger than fiction, as they sometimes say.
I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't. If I'm a Denver Broncos quarterback, I wouldn't play at a place called Arrowhead.
If I shoot under par at Arrowhead Golf Course, that means I can go in and win a game in Kansas City Arrowhead. I can see it. It's conquering the beast. Jeremy says McGlinchey's going to be here at least 3 years due to guarantees. Probably. Hopefully he plays pretty well, but we'll see how McGlinchey's contract plays out. He's the one that has the most risk, no doubt, but somebody the Broncos really wanted. Degeneration X coming in. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. This is good morning, all. Denver Luke, good morning, Nick and Scott. Hope you all are doing great. We're doing pretty good. Chef Evo, good morning, Broncos, or good morning, fellas. Good to see you. And also, yeah, he changed his name from Luke Wright to Denver Luke. So I recognize the picture there. So that's all good. Gary Palmer, good morning, all. Greg Smith's in the house. Good morning to you, Greg. Gatorade Gaming. Good morning, Nick and Scott. What's good, Broncos country? We're just chilling. We're hanging out, getting it started here. Albert Nopper saying good morning, y'all. Michaela Israel, I saw your tweet this morning with your Broncos for Breakfast mug. Appreciate you. So I can't stay for the full show. Have to drive for work out of town. Well, put us up on YouTube. That's sometimes I've done that too. Maybe as long as you are paying attention to the road and everything. Chase Wellner, good to see you. Nathan Mark, will the Broncos be able to beat the Chiefs or the Chargers this year? I think the Broncos, you have 4 chances, Chiefs and Chargers. They typically beat the Chargers at least once a year. So I'm going to say, yes, they'll be able to beat the Chargers. The Chiefs, I mean, God, I'll believe it when I see it at this point. It's unbelievable. They haven't won since week 2 of 2015 against Kansas City, which is just crazy to say. I mean, think about how much has changed in the world since September 2015.
Holy cow. See, that's how when things start going by too fast, you have to start thinking of events.
Yeah.
2015, I was just in the process. I moved to New York at the end of 2014 and was working out of Manhattan in 2015. That was a lifetime ago. Oh my God.
It's been that long since Denver has beaten.
That was like 4 jobs ago. A couple of states. Yeah, 2015 is a long time.
Yeah, so, I mean, God, any given Sunday, right? Will they be able to beat the Chiefs Chargers? Maybe, but the Broncos won't be favored in either game against Kansas City unless something happens to Mahomes. But one day, there will be an eventuality. The Chiefs will not beat Denver forever, just by sheer dumb luck. Denver will probably be able to, just probability, beat the Chiefs. Will it be this year? We can only hope. But for now, I'll believe it when I see it. CAA saying shout out to the Coast to Coast boys from Greeley, Colorado. Very much not the coast there out there in Greeley, but that's okay.
No, that's us. We're the Coast to Coast guys.
I know. So we'll wave. I'll wave east, Scott, you wave west, and we'll say hi to CAA. Coming in here. Gary Palmer, good morning, Nick and Scott. Good to see you, Gary. $20 super chat. That's amazing. Coming in, helping us with our coffee, keeping the lights on, keeping us going here. We're in the home stretch, and this time of year can be pretty exhausting. That final leg to the draft is like, I'm ready for a little bit of a break. Although once the draft content kind of dries up, I'm also a little sad. So it's the double-edged sword there. But Gary, guys like you helping and supporting us make it all worth it. So we do appreciate that. Talking about support too. Michael Ronquillo, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for Breakfast. Go Broncos and Buckham. Bama X in the house. Good
Michael, thank you for the stars too. We appreciate your continued support. As always, my friend, we can keep saying it. It never stops being true.
Yeah, Michael is Mount Rushmore, no doubt. Got to build the monument. Michael's one of the big contributors, benefactors of the show. We really do appreciate that. Jason Walton, there's something special about seeing offensive line mall teams when the weather gets cold. Getting a road grading center to complete the offensive line overhaul would be clutch. Yeah. I've mentioned these two teams a few times. I think more so on the Falcons shows, considering the Falcons are closer to becoming this kind of team with their offensive line infrastructure. But last season, there were 2 offensive lines in the NFL that I would consider matchup proof. And that means that any single given week, whatever they wanted to do scheme wise, they could do because they did not have to worry about the offensive line crumpling. And that was the Philadelphia Eagles, no doubt. I mean, what an unbelievably talented offensive line. And then also underrated the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions offensive line was incredible. It's probably one of the best 3 in the NFL. And the only reason that team did not make the playoffs last year was because they had the 32nd or 31st ranked defense and a dependent quarterback. Dependable, but dependent in Jared Goff.
And I think you said like by some margin 32nd as
Oh,
far as their ranked defense
horrible.
was so bad. So, but yeah, there's something primitive about watching up, lining up, and just whipping the man in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's, we can get into chess matches and the schemes and all this kind of stuff. And if I can line up and knock you down, I'm going to win. I'm going to beat you. So it kind of goes back to that lizard part of our brain that enjoys the game, the big hits over the middle and the imposing your will on somebody else, the physical nature of this game that makes it a little sadistic, that we're here for it.
Yeah.
We're here for it. But yeah, you don't want to be labeled as a finesse team in football. That's kind of a tongue-in-cheek insult.
Yeah, I mean, it harkens me back to 2013 where the Broncos were, number one offense in NFL history, and they were very much finesse. Granted, they had a slew of injuries on defense.
How was that defensive side though? And the Broncos were always able to run the ball though.
Not 2013 when they
didn't have to. You throw for 5,000 plus yards and 50 touchdowns. I don't have to run the ball.
Yeah. But that team was very much a finesse team, and then they got punched in the mouth in the Super Bowl and kind of fell apart from there. Now, again, I will not go to my grave, but I think it's important to say that Broncos had like 5 starters with ACL injuries like over the last 6 weeks of the season or something crazy. I mean, Von Miller out, Derek Wolfe out, Chris Harris Jr. out on the defense. Well, wow, we're missing all our good defensive players and our defense falls apart. That's shocking. But yeah, that was it's good to be a physical team out there. We got Meepier coming in here, Mypier, saying, curious on your thoughts about how Denver will fare in the long run with our consecutive years with limited draft picks. It could be an issue, no doubt, especially, 2-3 years from now, where you're going to have less chances on players on cost control deals, especially the early returns on that 22 draft class don't look great. Right now, they're the only player that I would say that looks like a above average starter, or not even none of these guys yet, I would say above average starters, but the only 2 on the roster that look like contributors would be their first 2 picks 2 your first 3 picks in Dulcich and Mathis. Nick Bonito, we're still waiting on. Wazirike, we'll wait and see on. The 5th round, you might as well just, maybe flush it down the toilet right now. It's too early to say that for sure, but Delarian Turner-Yell, Montrell Washington, Luke Wattenberg, 2 of those 3 had a lot of had chances last year and did not look good at all. Delarian Turner-Yell, I'll give him benefit for now.
But I think this is a great question when you're talking about the long term. The short term, you love seeing the immediate impacts, but really does become, what does the long term look like? Nick Bonito, again, you may have heard me say before, when you're taking an edge in the 60s, that's a project. That's not an immediate impact type of guy for the most part at one of those premium positions. If you get lucky and hit, great, but it's not something you're necessarily counting on right away. And the cost control is one thing, but also it means that I've got first round draft picks that I don't necessarily have to decide whether or not I'm going to pick up their option. Jerry Jeudy has been, he's been solid. He's been okay. But this time a year ago, we're saying, no way do you pick up his 5th-year option. Now you say, yeah, probably you do. And you're talking about $12, $13 million or so of a cap hit that you might be able to use in free agency instead. So what it really means is you've got to really hit in free agency. Then you've got to do your scouting really well. You'll have the money to do it because, and I think Lawrence or Miguel are real big on this one. It's like, we won't have any players. Well, for the most part, a veteran minimum guy is better than a 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th round draft pick. They've been around long enough. They know the game. They will be able to be better players for you in the short run and depth. So you're okay there, but it means you better hit when you sign those guys in free agency. I think that was a great question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you're really going to feel the impact of that more so probably, 2025, 2026, where those draft picks will be hitting the 3rd, 4th, 5th year of their contracts. And you're just not going to have the cost controlled guy at a value position. Having a 2nd round pick that's a starting offensive tackle when you're paying them 10% of what the market dictates that quality of player would get on the open market. That's where the value of a lot of draft picks come from.
But if you hit on your free agency and you're paying your money, you got to pay some of these guys somewhere. You're going to be spending 200 and something million no matter what. you'll be okay. You will be okay, but you gotta it means you have to be more accurate.
Yeah.
It does. You have to be your scouting department, and you have to stay healthy, all those type of things. It leaves you less room for error, but you can
Yeah.
survive it, no problem, right? LA Rams.
Yeah, but then you pay that cost a little later sometimes.
They didn't go after younger guys though, right?
No.
They took a big swing and a miss. They didn't have necessarily a core of young players that they were building around. The Broncos still have a pretty good core of young-ish players that we can talk about, where the Rams had a veteran group where they said, we're going to go for this thing. And they did, and it paid off and it worked. Then they all got old and expensive and broken down, and you got to rebuild it then. And you don't have that young core. So, but you can survive it without a doubt. And having the right coach in place is more important than having a 28th pick in this year's draft. I'll say that forever. Now, what's expensive, Nick? Say it with me. What's expensive? Missing.
Yeah.
Missing is expensive. So when you don't take Abraham Lucas, it's expensive to replace him with Mike McGlinchey. But what is really expensive isn't missing on Abraham Lucas, is if you miss on Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
That is what will hurt your team more than not having the pick. If Russell Wilson plays at the level that he was accustomed to playing, you don't care. It was worth it. Absolutely worth it. But if you miss on that, it becomes real expensive.
I mean, we're just going to be able to look at the 4 players that the Seattle took versus Russell Wilson here pretty soon. And it's going to be like, if Russell Wilson was still a top 5, top 10 pick, yes. But then we're talking, top 5 pick, top 9 pick, top 45 pick, top 40 pick, whatever they're all going to be. That hurts a little bit. The other big thing about that question, the Broncos can somewhat get around it because they have wealthy owners. And so we saw it this year. We don't have draft capital. Right. What does that mean? We're going to go out there and spend. And they have the ability to do that.
Jalen Hurts, you saw the news yesterday. Yeah. So if you can front load those, if you can backload those contracts and the wealthy owners with the signing bonuses and whatnot, he's got less than a $10 million cap hit this year. He just signed like a record extension. In the first 4 years of his contract, the highest number he has for a cap hit is 33 in year 4, because you're able to kick some money down the road by paying out large. So there's ways around it for sure. Nathan Mark coming in. That feels like a newer name coming in with some stars over on Facebook for us. And talking about the opportunity cost of Russell Wilson isn't just the draft picks you gave up, but it's the salary you have to pay him that you don't have that money to then invest in your other team. So you miss on the players, you miss on the available salary cap money. Missing is expensive. And that's why, taking a big swing at quarterback is a giant risk. And, there's people out there that will, you read the general manager rankings. If you didn't go after that quarterback, by God, they think you're dog do. But
if you miss,
if it missed, you're not going to be on that list anymore. Your ass is going to be fired.
Or you'll be dead last like George Payton. I mean, year and a half ago, Broncos are set up. They're just a quarterback away. They're in perfect position to go make that move. They make that move, and early returns look like a big emphatic miss. Carol Allen coming in. Good morning, Broncos family. Good to see you, Carol. Appreciate you. Austin comes in. Nick was
sorry, real quick. Nathan had a question to go with that too. Actually, I had 2. So, well, you got the first one with the Broncos be able to beat the Chiefs. But he asked with this stars coming in on Facebook, he says, with the overall number 1 pick in your fantasy draft, who are you picking? Is this a keeper league?
Is this a redraft? Is this a dynasty league?
No, this is not. If I'm starting a keeper league, I'm going to keep a pretty close eye on where Bijan Robinson gets drafted.
Yeah. Yep. Bijan is way up there.
Nuts. Oh, the wide receivers are so. I haven't played fantasy in so long. I still think of it being running backs dominated.
Running backs and wide receivers are about equal at this point.
But with the per catches and stuff, I don't even know. It's like, wait a minute, Austin Eckler is like number 3. What? I'm not even sure who that guy is. He plays out in the West Coast.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh yeah, he's got like 15 receiving touchdowns. He's pretty good. I don't know, Nathan. I haven't played fantasy. The last time I played fantasy was, speaking of a while ago, was when I moved back to Georgia. A league I started was still going. They invited me back in. I took a last place team and won it. And then I was like, listen, I don't want to play anymore. I'm too obsessive. I'm like, have you ever seen Nick Saban coach? Does he ever look happy to you? That's how I feel playing fantasy, and it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it.
I mean, the answer is Christian McCaffrey. what he's did in that San Francisco offense down the stretch there,
Number
how much he
one?
was utilized? Oh yes, his PPR and everything, the half point touches. I mean, he was incredible in San Francisco. I think he was like outpacing everybody by like a significant margin. So I think the answer is going away Christian McCaffrey. For me personally, I think he's not the most talented back in the NFL. I think Saquon is probably still the most talented back, but you combine Christian McCaffrey's usage in the pass game with the San Francisco offense and Kyle Shanahan's mind. I think that's the one to go with, and I don't even think twice about it.
Yeah, he
If
scores a
it's
bunch of touchdowns. I bet Jamal Williams was pretty high last year. Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, and then you
yeah,
look at Justin Jefferson wouldn't be an all bad
no,
decision.
Jamar Chase,
Devontae Adams, again, the Raiders, they put up some numbers, 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns. I don't know about you. I actually cut touchdowns in half with my point scoring. I only gave touchdowns 3 points instead of 6. So quarterbacks were devalued just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, that, of course, I think the year after I started was a year when I started that league was like the year after Tom Brady threw 50 touchdowns and had Randy Moss that year, I think. And I'm like, listen, he's scoring twice the points of Emmitt Smith, who ran for 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns. That's not equitable to me. Someone says, well, but there's only one quarterback and 2 running backs. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense.
And also your 8th quarterback is probably better than your 8th running back. It's like the scarcity versus impact discussion that we have with all these positions.
I wanted to be like the best guys to be fairly equal.
I typically like to make it a 3 wide receiver starting league, that just because there's more wide receivers out there.
Yeah, I didn't do tight end mandatory. In fact, we had it. You could run a run and shoot. You could run 4
wide receivers.
You could run 4 receivers if you wanted to. I never played tight end mandatory.
Well, then tight ends are worthless besides Travis Kelce.
They weren't when I started it in the 90s. I've been doing this
now.
Since fantasy football was like, geeks like me. It was like the NFL draft. It was recruiting. I was doing all that stuff before anybody else did. And then it became kind of mainstream. And now I'm like, now everybody's doing it. Now it's not as fun. It's not as cool or nerdy, whichever. Now that it's cool, I don't want to do it anymore.
I always did pretty well because I wasn't drafting the running back. I was drafting the infrastructure of the run game, and I was drafting running backs in offensive lines. And I would typically do pretty good with second year and first year running backs that hadn't gotten the chance yet, but I loved the offensive infrastructure. So Austin H coming in saying, Nick, what's the coolest stadium you've been to? Mariner Stadium is sick. Mariner Stadium is sick. I'm going to be extremely biased here on this one, but I absolutely adore Kinnick. Kinnick was built, pre-World War II, and I'm not kidding you. You are so close to the sidelines that you can reach out and steal the opposing team's helmets, and it happens more often than you'd like. So if you're an opposing player coming to Kinnick, watch your gear because it'll be in the 8th row before you blink. So Kinnick is unbelievable. Just like they call it the Wrigley Field of college football because it's so old and you're so close to the action. A lot of football stadiums today are built like where you could fit a track in between them. Kinnick, you are in there, and it's also built vertically, so it is a sound, like it is so loud in there when you're in that end zone. So I love Kinnick. I thought that Mariner Stadium is really cool. Oh, one that I really enjoy, and this is me just being from the Midwest, but I always really enjoyed going to Lucas Oil Stadium too. Again, bringing it full circle, I was talking about the Colts earlier, but the new Lucas Oil Stadium, very beautiful. That's where the Combine's at, the convention center, everything. They got a good thing going there in Indy with that overall building and infrastructure. So Lucas Oil, also the house that Manning built, as they call it. So that's a little bit something I enjoy too. But Lucas Oil is beautiful.
My favorite game day atmosphere was Tennessee. UT, the Vols with the Vol Navy. Some of my friends up there had old money, and when you ride up there in a 80-foot yacht and park as part of the Vol Navy right on the river and walk to the game. Now, inside was one of my least favorite places, so the stadium itself. But as far as the game day atmosphere, the Vol Navy is really, really cool.
Yeah.
I might be biased. It doesn't mean I'm wrong, but there's some pretty good crown jewel stadiums right here in Atlanta now. Mercedes-Benz is a multi-billion-dollar facility, and then SunTrust Park, Truist Park for the Atlanta Braves are both top notch. I have been to Camden Yards in Baltimore. Very nice. But for me, I remember more of the games than the stadium. Some of my favorite games were at the Swamp in Florida, Auburn, Florida, 1994. That was one of my favorite experiences. So it has a lot to do with that.
Yeah. And being biased again, I will say, so I went to the Broncos week 1 game, Broncos at Seattle this last year, and it was loud there, and I don't know if it's just the atmosphere and the patrons at these games, but I'd been to games at Kinnick that were significantly louder. Where it's just, granted, I've been to a lot of games at Kinnick and I've seen some very emotional moments in those stadiums. So Miguel coming in. Good morning, fellas. I've been worried that we were going to turn into the Rams after selling the farm to win the Super Bowl. I don't know if you're going to turn into the Rams, so to speak, but the Broncos could have a couple lean years, especially if, let's say, you have not only the lack of draft capital that you're going to be feeling more year 3, year 4 of those contracts, but then maybe having to deal with the Russell Wilson dead cap hit. You still have the good coach and everything, but there could be a dip, so to speak, that's not outside of the, and we're already pretty low, but like
you're already in the dip. The Rams won the Super Bowl. I don't think this cycle you're turning into the Rams. You're at the low point. This is the post. I've already given everything's up. You just don't have a Super Bowl to show for it. Now you're rebuilding.
I would say, though, with how this core is built right now and the Russell Wilson stuff, I think they're going for it this season, maybe 2024 as well. But if it does not work out these upcoming seasons because of the roster, injuries, everything like that, I could see them, even taking a step back from a talent perspective again, just because of where the roster is at right now. And then really true rebuild 2025, 2026, 2027. It'll be interesting to follow, see what happens. I'm everything's possible, right? Like last year, we couldn't have predicted what happened. So now I'm like, the wide ranges of possibilities in the multiverse are, endless. So we'll see.
So what do you think? 9 wins, or it's the reset button, or would 9 do it? I think 9 would probably do it, where we feel like we can add a couple of pieces and take the next step in our second year with Sean Payton.
So much depends on the quarterback, right? Like, is it 9 wins in spite of Russell Wilson, or is it 9 wins where you see like an improvement? Like, okay, he's still got some of the stuff he had in Seattle. So I think you probably do try to run it back again. But if it's in spite of Wilson, maybe you just say, you know what? We're going to bring in a rookie quarterback here. We're going to do the Jarrett Stidham experience for a season, and then we'll see what the 2025, 2026 quarterback draft class looks like. But yeah, it's I think 9 wins is what you're shooting for. And it's not.
Thank you for the stars, Miguel.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Miguel. Mandingo Dan, greetings from Ecuador. Good to see you. Ernie Mays, good to see you. Go Broncos country only. I'll add that for you. Rob Bucksbaum coming in here saying, good morning, Nick and Deacon Scott. Always the best MHH team. Your thoughts on the Broncos going after Budda Baker? Sutton for him? I don't think we should. I don't think it's going to be Sutton for Budda Baker straight up. It's probably going to be Sutton plus pick 68 or your 4th round pick for Budda Baker. Scott, this is something we talked about the other day with the Falcons. I think Budda Baker is a great player, and I'm always here to add great players, but it's Budda Baker plus a new contract. Can you imagine spending that much of your cap on the safety position, which is arguably the least valuable on the defense? I don't know if it's the best resource allocation.
What's he talking about as far as like new money? I mean, he's already within $1.5 million of Justin Simmons as being the highest paid safety in the league. And he's got 2 years left on his deal. I think this is more about, I want to be out of Arizona.
It sounds like he wants out of Arizona, but on top of that, with the new start, a new contract. And it might be
the guarantee money is probably already gone. So he's looking to make sure he's got his guarantee for the next. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's okay. Positional value, again, I say all the time, there is no positional value concerns on a game changer. Is he that guy? Is he a game changer for you? He's pretty darn good. But is he a game changer in the 18 to 20 million range? He's already at like 13 and a half or 14. Now, I don't know that he's looking for a huge raise. I mean, Justin Simmons is number 1 at 14.5. Okay. So a huge raise doesn't put him at 15. I think he's just looking for longer. I think he's looking for more guarantee money, 5 years, 5 times 75, 5 at 75. I want 5 years, $75 million. That's not a big raise. That's just a lot more guaranteed money for him. Mm-hmm. So I don't think the cost year to year, I don't think is that big a deal. If you're okay with him at 13, you're okay with him at 15, Nick. That's kind of how I see it. Yeah. But are you okay with him at 13? That's the bigger question.
It's a tough one. Again, paying that much money for the safety position, it's not your cornerbacks, it's not your trench players. I mean, that's where I'd be looking to spend money if I could help it. So I don't know, but we got Erwin Serrano coming in here. I don't recognize the name Erwin, but I recognize the number here, $49.99. Oh my God. Erwin coming in big time, supporting the show. Thank you so much, Erwin. If you have any questions, run it back. Give us another comment here, but we really appreciate the massive and generous super chat there. That's incredible.
Thank you, sir. Erwin comes in the evening, so appreciate you getting up in the morning with us.
Hell yeah.
Helps keep the lights on, keep my forehead nice and shiny for sure. Daniel Swafford comes in with some stars also. He says, love listening to you guys. Well, we love that you're here. Thank you,
I
sir.
appreciate it.
Always great content and easy morning listen. Well, thank you. That's very nice of you to say, and thank you for the support over on Facebook.
Yeah, well, we really do appreciate that, Daniel. I recognize Daniel, of course. And I also recognize Lance Johnson coming in. Good morning to you, Lance. You also Crazy Hayes come in and say, do you think Alberto Cuebanon will be involved at all next season? Seemed to be a decent pass catcher when not on the bench. He's talented and he has a very niche role, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if Sean Payton had a role carved out for him. The issue is that he is a tendency giveaway player at this point. I don't know what is the type of poker where you put the cards on your head. That's
It's
essentially
called
when
Indian. We call it Indian poker. They probably changed the name on it because it's you're not allowed to say Indian now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Native American poker. What I don't know. The poker where you show your hand. At that one. That's essentially what Alberto Cuebanon was on the field last season. Anytime he's on the field, you knew it's like, oh, 85's in. It's going to be a pass. Everyone, don't crash. Don't bite the play action. And with every single move the Broncos have made this year, it's been one that you want to be able to run the ball better. You want them to bite on the play action. So I could see him having a niche role without a doubt, but the Broncos have been scouting tight ends pretty heavily. They paid Manhurts a solid contract to come in and be that extension of the offensive line kind of player. So he could have a role. It's going to depend greatly on the draft. I think it's just as likely that he's not here at all as it is he carving out a role of any significance, though.
I agree. I think the two guys I thought were going to benefit the most for Russell Wilson last year, I said Albert O and Jerry Jeudy. I batted 500 on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And when Alberto came back into the game, he had a big game, 80 yards, a touchdown catch. He still didn't look good doing it. Mm-hmm. It was like blown coverages and wide open, and he was just fighting the ball. His confidence looked so low.
Yeah.
When we talk about talent, we're usually talking about height, physical talent, size, speed. He's got that. But does he have, and it kills me because he caught so many balls at Missouri. He doesn't look comfortable. He does not look confident. Can you get that back out of him? I've never seen it, is the thing. I've only seen a little bit in 2021 and 2022. Has he always been this uncomfortable catching the football? And I know what you've said about his blocking all along.
I think it's partially also because of the Josh Heupel offense that he was in at his best is a make-believe offense in terms of spacing that you get in the college game, the wider hash marks. They have the slot players playing outside the bleeping hash marks for that now Tennessee offense, former Missouri offense, former Art Briles Baylor offense. Not a lot of good skill players have come out of those systems. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with those Tennessee wide receivers this year. But because of that, I think that he has been used to operating with a lot of space and not having to deal with physicality. And the NFL game, guys are bigger. The game is more condensed. You're going to have to deal with physicality no matter what. It's one of the big questions with this wide receiver class being so small. The physicality is going to be totally different level in the condensed spaces. And I think he's kind of a little bit afraid of contact. I don't want to use the S word. That's a dirty word. I know that others have thrown it around with Alberto Cuebanon, but he's a talented player. It's just, you got to have that.
Finesse.
Yeah, that's another one.
We don't say soft, we say finesse.
You just not to co-adopt or use one of the memes that's pretty popular these days. But does he have that dog in him? I mean, it's like a little bit of a cockapoo in there versus that.
Is that what that is? I had no idea what that was.
He's got that dog in him.
It's an X-ray with like a little dog in the chest,
like a pit bull.
Does he have that dog in him? Okay, it just finally made sense. Thank you.
Glad we can get Scott up to. Yes, that's what it is. So it's like, it's about the mentality. Does he have like, that nasty, street fighter?
I know all the phrases. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. I get it. I saw that X-ray and I never really knew what it meant.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. Do you have that dog in him?
Makes sense. Hey, just read it. It's like one of those where you have to hear it for it to make sense as opposed to just see it when you're reading. And it's like, say it out loud. When there's like a play on words, you're like, say it out loud. You're like, oh, now I get it. I'm embarrassed. Yeah. I mean, what is that meme? There's a dog in him. Oh,
there it is. RJ, good morning, RJ. Albert Knoppers coming in saying, great show, thumbs up. You guys be like Albert Knoppers. Click that thumbs up if you're joining us today. Would really appreciate that.
I gave Albert a thumbs up. I can do that on Facebook. Good. I like that. I wish we could do that on YouTube as well.
Yeah, we got Colin Woods saying, you think it'd be easy to replicate Nick and Scott's dialogue with AI chatbots? I think that there's so much content out there from us that you could feed it into an AI chatbot, and then you could have a show with that. But I don't know if they'd be as funny as we are, right? That's what we're going for. But yeah, the AI chatbots are pretty damn incredible. That's for sure.
See, Colin knows I'm going to have a couple pretty reflexive answers that you could replicate, but dude, it's hard enough for me to take out one sentence out of these swirling voices in my head. I don't know that you could trust AI to do that, for goodness sakes.
The multiverse bit is definitely out there. Not to dig up old ones
I don't
for
like
me.
the multiverse. I think it's cheating.
It's kind of cheating, but it's also a way for me to say that I doubt that outcome happens.
Yeah,
But
but I mean, like,
it's
I'm into all the Marvel stuff. I'm
a
into the
possibility.
DC
Yeah.
stuff. I watch all of the superhero things several times, and the multiverse is just, I don't like it. I don't like it. I
It's
think it's cheating for writing.
yeah, it's ChatGPT got me through college. Well, don't tell your bosses that. No, actually, that's called problem solving. Peter coming in here saying, "Good morning, guys. Great work as always. We appreciate that, Peter." Adam Strange coming in saying, "What's up, Broncos maniac?" Gatorade Gaming. My favorite Scott comment would be, "What's SMH? Smack my head." Yeah, that was a classic. That
You
should be
get a
on a
big
shirt.
target.
Yeah.
Boom.
And we also got Lance coming in saying, "Isn't Buda Baker a natural complement to Simmons? Buda is a physical heat-seeking missile, and Simmons is a ball hawk." I think you would be very complimentary to Simmons, but you're already talking about a team. We've mentioned it earlier in the show that you have limited draft capital, which means those cost-controlled players 3 to 4 years from now. Precious draft capital. There we go. That's what we're looking for.
There you go, Colin. Draft capital. You mean,
But
is that different than draft picks? Because I've heard draft picks for 75 years. Did they change?
okay, I think draft capital actually includes the where the picks are located because it's the value of each one. Where you can have a lot of draft picks, but if they're all seventh rounders, you have draft picks.
So how
You
does
don't have
draft capital then
capital.
explain to me where those picks are, as opposed to just saying draft picks? Nick, they
Because
don't. You can't win this one.
I think
You
capital
can't.
includes the value.
You
Like if
cannot. But it doesn't tell you the value, so it doesn't do any different. Draft capital or draft picks are the same fucking thing.
I'll fight you this one too. I think if you have a lot of draft, if you have 3 first-round picks, I think you have higher draft capital than if you had 20 seventh-round picks. Because the value would come out higher, which is the word for
capital is the value of the picks as opposed to the picks themselves. I could say I've got a lot of high draft picks.
High value draft picks equaling capital. Yeah, I mean, that's the English language, Scott. We have a lot of different words for things that kind of mean the same thing, but we got to love that. Let's get into the topic today. PFF, thank you so much for the content machine that is Pro Football Focus. We have 32 teams, their biggest needs before the NFL draft, and PFF has some interesting ones here. We've kind of talked about some of these, but we're going to get into some of the options here. And if we have any differing opinions from this article from Brad Speilberger over at Pro Football Focus, and he has the remaining starter needs for the Broncos being 2 in the secondary. We talked a little bit today, safety being one of them, as well as cornerback. And then the remaining depth needs here, according to this article for the Broncos, the center position. We talked about that a lot this season. And linebacker, off-ball linebacker, stack linebacker, Mike linebacker, whatever word of the day we want to use. And Brad writes, I couldn't see Scott's face there because I'm reading the article, but I'm sure his eyes rolled back. Adding a top free agent guard available in Ben Powers and one of the most sought-after tackles in Mike McGlinchey should help transform the offensive line ahead of Russell Wilson, but his improvement is still necessary to get this team back on track. The quarterback, of course. If Denver sticks with the trio of Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and Tim Patrick, it's a very capable group when healthy, and the eventual return of running back Javonte Williams will take some pressure off the passing game as well. Defense should once again be a stout unit, though there are legitimate questions at the secondary, in the secondary outside of star cornerback Patrick Surtain II and star safety Justin Simmons. If the defensive front generates enough pressure, the other defensive backs would hopefully hold up well enough. While there are some holes to poke here, the doom and gloom about the situation may have gone a bit too far. In the end, Russell Wilson needs to get back to form. I mean, it's about the quarterback, stupid. What was it? Bill Clinton when he ran in whatever it was before.
Your economy,
I was born, yeah, it's the economy, stupid. For the Broncos, it is the quarterback, stupid.
Yeah, I completely see safety. I really do. Mm-hmm. We're writing in Caden Stearns like he's accomplished something in this league. He hasn't. He's got 5 starts and was injured last year. Is that somebody that you want to have penciled in or inked in? Pencil's one thing. I don't mind penciling him in as a starter. But yeah, I think safety is a big need for this team, Nick. I think it's a big question mark going in. Mm-hmm. I've said and will continue to say center is the biggest weakness on the team, position by position, assuming we're not talking quarterback. Let's take quarterback off the table, everybody. Because you're not going to be able to fix that position this year. It's got to be an internal fix. It's going to have to be Russell Wilson or not. Yeah. So we take that one off the table. So, but safety. If I'm going through all those position by position, and I've got Caden Stearns there, I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. That's a concern for me, for sure.
It's the same exact conversation with Damari Mathis out there at the boundary cornerback. You have
I think Damari Mathis proved more playing in his first year. Now, Caden Stearns he played in 15 games, but he's got 5 starts. I thought Damari Mathis played more meaningful minutes than we've seen from Caden Stearns so far. Especially coming off an injury on top of it. So let's double down on that.
I agree with you. I think the flashes we saw from Caden Stearns were much higher. I mean, that Indianapolis game this season before he had the hip injury that pretty much cost him the entire season. After that was awesome. What do you have? 3 interceptions in that? 2 interceptions? I mean, the sideline to sideline ability. I mean, he looked like a good player in that Indianapolis game. He was probably one of the only good players on the field in that Indianapolis game.
Such a small sample size for a guy that didn't play again.
And that's the big thing here. Caden Stearns' durability. Both years so far, he's missed time because of injury. So I'm not sure about the safeties behind him. You got Delarian Turner-Yell still on the roster. Is he somebody you trust? So yeah, I agree, Scott. That's actually when I read the article from PFF here, I'm like, you know what? We probably have not given enough time to the safety position to talk about it, considering that it is a massive question mark. So now you got the Buda Baker conversation. You guys are already ahead of that. I was going to bring that into it. And as well as potential some other options here. There are some safeties the Broncos could look at. This is not a great safety draft class overall, I would say. The real dark horse here is maybe the Broncos do bring back Kareem Jackson still. One more year. I know he's older, but he at least offers a floor to the room.
Yeah, I don't know. That floor, you want the floor higher than that. I think you're better off. That time has come and gone. You know, it goes back to saying for me, Graham Glasgow. We could get Graham Glasgow cheap. Graham Glasgow's not good enough. Mm-hmm. You know, he wasn't good enough. I don't care if he's cheap at this point. If you're not good, you're not good. You can go get cheap and try and get an improvement at the same time. Going back, I looked him up on here on the Stearns and Mathis comparison, just on snap counts alone. Caden Stearns, 311 defensive snap counts in 2021, 275 in 2022. So he actually played a lot more, you know, especially per game with 3 starts in 2022. He had almost as many snaps in 2022 as he did in 2021 for a total of 586. Damari Mathis had 800 defensive snaps last year.
Yeah.
So again, I feel like we've got a bigger sample size, even though he's a year younger, on Damari Mathis. And he's not coming off an injury, which is a big deal, that I feel more secure about Damari Mathis at corner than I do Caden Stearns at safety.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that it comes to for me on this one is the value of where this draft class is stacking up. I think you're going to have some good picks available to you 3rd and 4th round to help the cornerback position. I'm looking at the safeties available, and I got to say, it's not a enticing group. Last year we had like 4 or 5 safeties in this range that I think all went like mid-second to late second. That I'm like, oh my God, every single one of these guys I really like. This year after, the safety from Alabama, whose name is Brian Branch, the names don't really do much for me. Antonio Johnson had some value coming into the year, but he really struggled last year. Quan Martin from Illinois.
So many of them to corner now, Nick. It's like if you can play defensive back at all, we need you in the slot. We need you as a nickel. We may only be playing one safety at a time, which could be the answer.
Yep.
Which could be the answer. That it's like, hey, there's more good athletic corners out there than ever, but there's less safeties. That's not a coincidence for me, Nick. Besides that, I used to be all about defense. I've told you this before. When I cut my teeth in this business, it was early 2000s moving forward. The game has changed so much, even in the last 5-10 years, that I used to say, play defense. For every wide receiver that's out there, they're dying for cornerbacks. Who wants to play defense anymore? You're not allowed to cover them. You're not allowed to hit. You're not allowed to tackle. You're not allowed to do anything without either getting a flag, or in college getting thrown out of the game. So it's tougher. I can see why. I understand why there might not be as many safeties out there for sure.
I will say that you've reached a tipping point for the value at cornerback. A lot of these guys that probably were playing wide receiver or even like running back are being moved to cornerback. And I also think you're starting to see a little bit of a renaissance there with the edge rushers as well, with all these different body types. These guys used to be, linebackers or running backs or tight ends. Now you're seeing them be edge rushers a lot more, the supreme athletes. With the, not the generic, 6'5" to or 6'3" to 6'5", 250 to 270 pounds. If you can play, you can play if you're a great athlete. So safety is a tough one, and you led me into the point I was going to make. The safeties on the board, I think if the Broncos do end up walking away with a safety round 3 or round 4, I think there's a very good chance it's somebody that did not play true safety in the NFL in college. They're probably somebody who's going to transition to the safety position. I could see somebody like the kid from Illinois, Jatavius Martin is an option there that could make that move without a doubt. Could see somebody like Corey Trice from Purdue as an option in that move. Cam Smith maybe also. We talked a little bit about Keely Ringo. He's somebody who might be moving to that safety spot.
There you go. There's a guy who's been playing corner all the time that should have been a safety. In 5 years ago he was.
Yeah. Yep, he's certainly an interesting one that could make that move as well. You got Jacorian Bennett from Maryland, opposite of Deontay Banks, could be that guy also. So there's some options. And PJ Locke, Michael Bronquillo brings up PJ Locke. PJ Locke is not on the Broncos, if I'm not mistaken. They did not. They rescinded his tender, or I remember about a month ago that he ended up not being on the team anymore. So I think he's out there as a free agent.
Okay, and I was just going to reiterate, the time of experience. Is a special teams guy. He's got in 3 years, he's got 1,000 special team snaps and 144 defensive snaps.
Yep.
So again, if you're going in to I thought they signed him too. He says he signed him to a 1 year deal. I thought PJ Locke was back.
If he is back, then I totally missed that.
But he's a special teams guy. Again, he could be a depth option, and people, they were raving about him last year, but he's pretty much only played special teams. So I still haven't heard the answer. If I'm looking at this roster and saying, okay, where do I need help? If we're talking about needs, safety is a sneaky. It's not even that sneaky. Safety is a big need for me. I don't feel comfortable going in saying Caden Stearns and PJ Locke. There's 600 combined snaps between those guys. That's 10 games worth.
Yep. You're right. And the Broncos did bring back PJ Locke. Good call. Thanks, guys. I redact that from the conversation here. March 16th.
Because he's forgettable. I mean, honestly, what he has accomplished on the field for the Broncos, other than the special teams, what's the signature PJ Locke play? He hasn't played defense.
Yep.
He hasn't been out there, but 3 or 4 snaps a game.
Yeah. He's pretty good as your fourth safety out there. It'd be nice to bring in somebody that can still compete with them if the draft falls a certain way. I'm with you, Scott. That said, I think it's going to be much easier to find a safety that you can go out there and even pluck off the street in free agency than it is to be able to find a competent challenger for the boundary cornerback spot opposite Damari Mathis. And that's why I tend to focus on the boundary cornerback position more.
So going back to our discussion of what are we going to do when we don't have any draft picks? I think it's easier to find a safety for $1 million than it is to find a safety in the 4th round that could come in and become a at least not a negative, a WAR replacement of 0, wins against replacement, just be an average player. I think it would be a lot easier to find in free agency than in the draft.
Yep. I agree with you. And just we've talked about it on here a lot, but the cornerback value from pick 50 to 80, there's some great names there. Unless there's a massive run on the position because teams hate these wide receivers and that kind of flips, certainly a possibility. You're picking pick 67, 68. Lord only freaking knows how it's going to play out in about a week and a half from now, but will be very fun and interesting to see. We got Peter Middleton, always fun and interesting to see in here, saying good evening from Cambodia. Just came back from a great Mexican Taco Tuesday. Oh, God. I love Seattle very much. I know I've been complaining about the weather a lot out here, but I will say the biggest complaint about Seattle, honest to God, is that the lack of Mexican food. I just cannot. I'm sure there are good places out there, but I used to have my little hole in the wall taquerias out there in Iowa, obviously agricultural community out there in Iowa. And I miss some great authentic carnitas. One of those places that's you have to order in Spanish and it has the Mexican grocery store next to it. It's got the hair gel and like the butcher shop all attached, like right next to each other. Like that's when you're getting the good Mexican food.
When I go to Seattle, I'm looking for my Thai food.
Thai food, sushi, Korean, God,
You can find good Mexican just about everywhere, though. It's enough of a culture in the entire United States that you should be able to find. You gotta look a little bit.
Everybody I've talked to out here says you got to drive out of Seattle to find it, to more areas that are agricultural, but we're still looking. Char Baldwin, good morning, guys. Do you think Sutton will be traded at the draft? Certainly a possibility. The Broncos, I mean, it could also be pretty good there for Jerry Jeudy as well, but you guys giving me crap. Iowa's where you go for Iowa Mexican food. I'm sure there is significantly better Mexican food in Texas and California, but there's a large agricultural community out there, and with that comes some pretty damn good places out there. And it's just what I grew up with. It's better than Seattle Mexican.
There's a Mexican influence state to state, across the continental U.S. that it can be found. And Shar, logically speaking, thank you for the stars on here as well. Appreciate the support coming in. Logically, my answer to this is no. I mean, because I've gotten into this before, so welcome in. Logically speaking, just on paper, they're asking for a 3rd round pick for Sutton and to pick up the remaining contract. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense from how good can Sutton be for your team versus what are you getting in return, especially this year, because you don't get the salary cap relief that you would as much so if you waited a year. Then you might even be able to get a better pick back because there's not as much guaranteed money available to the team that's taking him. If you waited a year, I think he would be an appreciating asset and help your team. Yeah. We just talked about WAR. I like that stat in baseball. Wins against replacement. Who are you going to replace him with? Tim Patrick? Maybe. You need 3 receivers. You only had 2 last year. So it doesn't make any sense to me. So there's something else going on. If you trade him, it's not a fit culture-wise. He wants out. That's something going on behind the scenes. So logically, I say no, he will not be traded leading up to or during the draft. But we could throw logic out the window when we start dealing with stuff that we don't know about going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The one thing I've just adding to the conversation, I don't disagree with you, but maybe the target distribution and the personnel that Sean Payton wants to use doesn't involve as many 3 wide receiver sets, and that he thinks he can pay, Marquez Callaway can come in and be my number 3 wide receiver and what I want to run. What I really need is another tight end that I value or a running back out of the backfield. And if you can get a Jahmyr Gibbs added to this team, I know Bama X doesn't like him for some reason in here, but he is a unique player that could be a total difference maker. Your offense could run through him, honestly, in this Sean Payton one, or one of these amazing tight ends in this class could reconfigure and redistribute where your targets are going and what your personnel looks like as your main packages on that team. But overall, I agree with your point. He's somebody probably going to have better value next season. He's easier to trade next season from a cap perspective. Why not just hold to him? Also, he's not a problem guy. So he seems like a great person. So unless he is, but
because he's professional enough that if he had a problem, we wouldn't know about it.
Yeah, it's smart enough too.
He would handle things behind the scenes quietly as a good professional would. We wouldn't know about it. And when I say 3 receivers, I mean even 3 for just 2 spots, Nick, not just 3 on the field at a time. You've got rotations going all the time, plus injuries. You're not flooded with wide receivers right now. You're thin at the position as it is.
Yeah, I agree. Again, it's just if you want to reset how that team looks there, maybe you want to get a running back. I think there's a drop off after Gibbs. After that, I'd rather wait until the 4th round personally. But and then also the tight ends in this class. There are 6 in this class that I think are pretty damn good. And that would kind of change the room. You could still add another wide receiver. The other part of this conversation, and we've talked about it a little bit on here, this is, I think, out of the last 20 years. I don't want to put words in anybody. I don't want to misstate this, but this might be the smallest wide receiver draft class ever. I mean, the average weight is like 180 or like it's tiny. There are just no X's in this class. After, even Quentin Johnson, who's big, he's a Z. I don't think he's an X. I think he's a Z. You have Cedric Tillman and you got Mingo. Those are like your 2 big body X guys. Maybe Perry, A.T. Perry as well, but just not a lot of size in this class. And talking about X receivers, I need you to read this one, Scott.
Fada Wolf asks, is Sutton worth precious draft capital? MHH for life. I wanted to hear Scott say precious draft capital. I can't help but think of Gollum talking about my precious whenever I read precious draft capital for the off-ball linebacker. For guys that article was such hogwash. Just the whole thing. Again, talking about, well, you traded away precious draft capital for a non-sure thing in Sean Payton. Well, what do you think draft picks are, y'all? You point me to the sure thing in draft picks, at number 28. Yeah. Good luck. That's going to make as much impact as a good head coach. Good luck.
Yeah, and Nigel Watts with the question, if Broncos are going to be a running team as it appears under Sean Payton, then how many wide receivers do you really need? You probably still need 3 or 4, but if you are going to be a running team, you know what those wide receivers have to freaking do? Block. And somebody the Broncos have now met with 3 times, I believe. They met with him at the Combine. They meet with everybody at the Combine. I think they met with him at his pro day, and they also brought him in, Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is somebody that we talked about on here. He did not really impress in the Senior Bowl, but he did pretty damn good at SMU for a number of years. And let me tell you, that guy blocks like a freaking demon out there. He's looking to decapitate defensive backs as a blocker, and that's something that be really valuable for this team.
And the answer, Nigel, is 4 healthy. Even if you're running a lot of 2 wide receiver sets, you need at least 4 healthy. There's got to be some rotations in there. If you're tracking distance run, they're tracking GPS on these guys. Wide receivers are going to be number 1. I'd play wide receiver in 7-on-7. They'd be running short. Say, okay, you do this, Scott, clear the zone, which is basically just a 50-yard sprint. After about 3 of those, you're like, somebody else clear the damn zone. I'm tired. Mm-hmm. So you've got to have a rotation in there. We don't even talk about injuries, but 4. I need 4 decent wide receivers on my active game day roster.
And that doesn't even get into the special teams.
That doesn't even talk about special teams. That's right.
So Patrick Wiltsey coming in here. Patrick, our guy, got your. Patrick sent me a few Lion Coffee stickers that I'm gonna have to truck up to Mailbox Peak at some point and slap him on there and give him a shout out on Twitter. The weather has been absolutely crap, so you'll probably have to wait a month still for that. But I'll make that 8-mile, 4,500 foot elevation game trek at some point before hiking season really gets here. I might try to carry about 50 pounds up as well, just as a good training hike for that as well, because I got a lot of plans this summer. But thank you so much, Patrick, for coming in. We do appreciate you. Scott, real quick, we don't have very much time left. Article lists safety and cornerback as the team starting needs. I agree with that. Then he lists linebacker, not edge, but
linebacker.
Linebacker.
Inside linebackers.
Inside, yeah. Mm-hmm. Inside linebackers. And then as well as a center. We've talked about center on here a lot. We can save that for another show. Everybody probably knows where we are on that. Most people, I think, agree with us. Lloyd Cushenberry is a concern on this offensive line, still was coming in and still is. But listing linebacker there, I think you're probably going to agree with me on this one. I feel significantly better about the backups or the depth at linebacker with Justin Strnad, Jonas Griffith, and potentially getting another guy in there, undrafted free agent, even something like that, free agent guy, versus what you have at offensive tackle right now. I mean, here's the names that you have listed as backup for offensive tackle. You have Christian DeLauro, Casey Tucker, Isaiah Prince, Hunter Thedford. The only name on there that I really know is Isaiah Prince, and that's just because he was a high recruit that played at Ohio State. But other than that, your offensive tackle depth is horrifying. It is dreadful. And if you lose one of those tackles right now, your whole offensive line might be sunk. Now, that's true for a lot of teams because there's not many good tackles out there, but your offensive tackle depth is terrible. To not list offensive tackle there versus linebacker, I think is a serious misstep on this article.
Yeah, maybe Quinn Bailey fills in at one of those spots at best. But again,
he was horrible.
I would put, as far as needs for depth, and maybe the question is, you feel better at least about your starters. I feel pretty good about the starting linebackers, inside linebackers for the Denver Broncos. That's certainly not a concern. As far as why isn't this team winning games, I feel like we would have to go several levels down before we got to the inside linebackers are costing us games. Yeah. It would take a while. Now, one injury at offensive tackle could cost us a game. The safety position, maybe you could target the safety position, but as far as linebackers go, you're pretty well said, especially if Jonas Griffith can get healthy and take the step forward that we were hoping to see after his 2021 season, where, 240 something pounds, big, fast, active, inexperienced, but playing next to two big veterans who can help guide him in the right direction. Turn him loose, wind him up, fire, aim, fire. He's that kind of player, but he's got to be healthy. But, you bring in, you've got Singleton and you've got Jewell. There's 300 tackles between them, and you've got decent backups. No, I agree with you. If I'm looking at depth, tackle's a lot scarier than linebacker, inside linebacker especially.
And if a linebacker of value falls to the Broncos and they love him round 3, round 4, take him. Josey Jewell, I love Josie. Good dude. Been pretty underrated on this Broncos team because he does what he does. He does pretty darn well. But the durability in 1 year of cost control left, if you like a linebacker that shows up, then take him. I have no issue with that. But from being a listed area of concern on this team, I'm not sure. Gatorade Gaming comes in and says Cam Fleming is still out there. I would be over the moon if the Broncos brought Cam Fleming back. He was incredible last season. He was the Broncos' second best offensive lineman in my book. And he played 2 different spots. So Cam Fleming coming back would be awesome.
Yeah, he was adequate. He was an average lineman at $1.2 million.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The rest of your offensive line was not average. No. If you could get average across all 5 positions, you would be a better football team.
Yep.
That's what you're looking to do. Get better. Do I have to fix it? No, but I can get better. I can improve. Is it going to be set for the next decade? You're hoping you do with right tackle and left guard right now, maybe left tackle over the course of the next several years. But I don't have to have an answer for the next 5 years at every single position. I just have to try and get better.
Yep.
Well, Cam Fleming did a pretty good job. And as a third tackle, he'd be a really good option. Double his money. You just wonder what other kind of options he's got out there. He should be a $3 million swing tackle. Easy. Triple his money, someone. So I'm wondering what else is going out there. And he says, is Cam a swing tackle or just a right tackle? As a backup, I think he's fine. You could play him at left tackle. He's not your first option. And you can't convince me that he would be the worst starting right tackle in the league. And he's cheap. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He was, again, you triple his money, you're talking $3 million.
Last year, the Broncos decided to put Cam Fleming at left tackle over the left tackle only Calvin Anderson, if that says anything. So Fleming was right tackle, moved over to left tackle to jump the guy who could only play left tackle in Anderson. I think he's pretty good. I've said it before. If he's your starter out there, you don't love it, but he can stopgap for a year for you there. You'd love to have him as your third guy. And he has some guard ability as well. I mean, you want your backups to be
But think about it. If I'm his agent, if I'm Cam's agent, say, you've banked a couple $1 million now. You should be fairly well set. The Broncos have come back to you with $1.5 million to come be a reserve. You're not going to start there. I would advise you to sit back, wait till after the draft, and see if you can pick a place where you've got a chance to start.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what I would advise him. So it doesn't completely surprise me that he's still out there. I think it's probably a big surprise to someone like Dalton Reisner that he's still out there because he probably feels that he should be a starter for any team. So he's probably more surprised about it. But Cam, I would advise him, take your time. Take your time and see what becomes the best option for you. And then if you have to, a third tackle reserve role at $2 million is always on the table for you.
Yep. Final thought on this article before we get out, because we're already running late. We haven't even done a mock today. We're not going to. We'll have to come do one Thursday.
Yep.
But not even listing running back here. And Brad in the PFF article lists about Javonte Williams coming back and taking some pressure off the pass game. Are we sure he's back? I think that obviously asking Brad to know as much as we know about the Broncos, about 32 teams, is unreasonable. We know that banking on Javonte Williams this season is something that's probably not advisable, especially for a team that is looking to lean as hard into the running back as the Broncos are. I'm a big fan of Samaje Perine, jack of all trades kind of guy as your second back. But right now, this team is lacking they need another horseback there. And it does not sound like it's going to be the Latavius Murray. There are still running backs out there on the market that could come in for a 1-year contract that could contribute to that. I mean, heck, I know they're old and they're not great anymore, but for one season, Kareem Hunt, Zeke Elliott, there's options out there that you could have for cheap 1-year contracts. And I'm guessing there's going to be some guys that are cut as well following the draft. It's a decently deep draft class. Maybe you see the Broncos draft one as well. But right now, running back I would put running back in the starter category along with safety and cornerback and center. Honestly, all those ones, you could put them all together. And then after that, offensive tackle, probably the main depth one for me.
So my question is Samaje Perine an upgrade over Latavius Murray?
Yes, because he is
Okay,
far
so you
more
got
versatile.
better. You did.
Yes.
Remember, I just went through that whole spiel. You know, you're how do I improve my team? I can't get an answer at every position right away. So I've gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
Now I need some insurance for sure. Just like I said about Cam Fleming, is the same thing I would say about the running back position. There's no rush. There is no rush to go out there and I got to sign a running back right now. I have to use a 3rd round pick on a running back. No, take your time. You got by the metrics, by PFF metrics, you got one of the best running backs in the NFL off of somebody's practice squad last year. Latavius ended up finishing like a top 10 graded running back. He played really well. He was steady. He was secure. He ran hard. You can get those guys. There's no rush. So you feel good about Samaje Perine improving the running back room, improving your starter if he has to be the main guy. Javonte Williams is a wild card out there. If he comes back, great. If he doesn't, and I'm going to need somebody else regardless, I have time to do that. They can be found. And they will be. You're not done at running back for sure.
No, they're going to have to bring in another body there. And you also have more information about Javonte Williams the closer we get to the season. So we'll have to make that decision then. 78 Leadhead said, Nick, was Bob Sanders the smallish Colt safety from back in the day? Yes, 2005, I want to say. Whatever year the Colts won the Super Bowl, he was the defensive player of the year. And that was like the only year Peyton was in Indy with a top 10 defense and they ended up winning the Super Bowl or something. So
funny how that works, doesn't it?
Yeah. So then you have Tom Brady as a top 10 defense and top 10 offensive line, every single year, but like 2 in New England. But yeah, Bob Sanders, heck of a player, still got his jersey, Colts jersey, great player. He got hurt a lot, but I mean, he was awesome dude and a great Hawkeye as well.
And let's finish up running back and then get out of here. Just, running back isn't a scheme position. It's a natural born talented position. You could wait till the week before the game and raid somebody's practice squad for your second running back. If you only had, if you needed a backup right away, you can wait on that one as long as you possibly can. There's no rush. It will happen. I'm fairly confident you're not done at the running back position.
I know we need to get out of here, but I want to add to this because I've been thinking about it. You asked me if Samaje Perine was better than Latavius Murray. He is a better player, but I might argue that as far as an overall ball carrier, your number one type of role, Latavius Murray fits it more than Samaje Perine. Samaje Perine is an excellent second back, auxiliary back. He's not very fast. He's not very explosive. He's only fine between the tackles. He's only fine as a runner, but he's good enough in all those areas. He can play under center run game, shotgun run game. He's an awesome pass protector, and he's a good back in space. He's smooth. He's fluid. He's not sudden. He's not explosive, but everything he does is just, in control. For that body type and size, it's awesome. I don't know if that's somebody I want, first and second down as much as I want, second and third down. So you're still looking for that, first on the depth chart guy, in my opinion, just how I perceive the skill of Samaje Perine. Now, granted, he's been behind Joe Mixon, who's a very talented back. We'll see what happens with Joe Mixon. He's got some ugliness going on right now. But
again,
yeah. So that's my thoughts on the position right now. You're still looking for, I think, that one, even though you've improved the position, they're different roles in my perception.
But the overriding factor is we can get a Latavius Murray pretty easily.
Yeah. Yes.
You can find a guy who can carry the load, be a 3 yards in a cloud of rubber pellets. Actually, they still play on grass a lot in the NFL.
Yeah.
3 yards in a cloud of dust type of guy to secure the ball. That's not a hard position to fill.
Especially for 1 year. I agree. Michael Ronquillo, great show today. Nick and Scott and Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and Buckham. Also wanted to say hi to Keith Brugman saying good morning. All caps there. Sorry you're late, Keith, but that's okay. And we're going to have to wrap it on up. So good morning and goodbye. We appreciate everybody.
It's perfect.
Aloha. Yeah, peace. Ciao, as they say. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scott Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod and at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, also join us at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. Click that bell icon so that way you get the alert when we go live. And I will see you guys again tonight with Carl on building the Broncos. But until then, you guys have a great one. A lot of fun today. We went long, but it's the content machine, right? It's the leading to the draft. We only got so many shows before that happens with those kind of conversations. It's all going to be real soon. So, Scott, any final words, any final thoughts before we get on out of here?
No, should be with y'all tonight, at least in the background. So come see us on building the Broncos tonight at 6 Mountain Time and at 3:00 Eastern. Go Chelsea.
Go Chelsea, the boys in blue. Let's see what happens. Well, you guys have a great one. Continue to choose kindness and compassions. Go Broncos, and everybody, buck you. We appreciate it. Peace. With a B.